The proposed amendments are to address the minimum parcel size for subdivision requirement on the smaller of the two proposed parcels south of McKinney Road. And there is a historic ALC decision on this property from the 1980s, which authorized the subdivision of the property along McKinney Road. And for this reason, the proposal details are to redesignate the property from agriculture, or the 2.6 hectare portion of the property south of McKinney Road, from agriculture to small holdings, and to amend the zoning designation of this portion of the property from agriculture 2 to small holdings 4. This would have the effect of allowing a minimum parcel size for subdivision of 2 hectares for the portion south of McKinney Road. And the permitted uses for this zone are a single detached dwelling as the only permitted principal use, and agriculture would remain as a permitted accessory use. In general, the small holdings 4 zone would allow for a narrower range and primarily residential uses compared to the AG2 zone. That's the end of my PowerPoint.
Is there a second portion to that? Okay.
Okay, so the second portion of this is for RDOS file number E2024.014 zone. So the subject property is located at 3005 Narromata Road. It is designated as commercial in the OCP and zoned commercial 1 currently. The parcel is approximately 0.98 hectares in size, and it is entirely within the ALR. So this proposal is to amend the electoral area EOCP bylaw number 3010, 2023, and the Okanagan Valley zoning bylaw number 2800, 2022, in order to allow for an existing structure to be converted to a single detached dwelling and to allow for agricultural use. It is proposing to change the OCP designation from commercial to agriculture and the zoning from general commercial 1 to agriculture 1. The relevance of the agriculture 1 zone is to allow for the single detached dwelling and the agricultural use that's being proposed for the property. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. I will now declare the public hearing open and ask if there's anybody who wishes to speak to the proposed bylaw or bylaws. Anybody online or on phone that wishes to speak or in the room with us here today? I'll ask for a second time. Is there anybody wishing to speak to the proposed bylaws? I'll check with Adam to see if I'm missing anybody. I'm not seeing any hands on my screen. Okay. For a third and final time, I'll ask if there's anybody who wishes to speak to the proposed bylaws or the changes to them. Not seeing any, so I will hereby declare the public hearing closed at 1:08 p.m. Thank you, everybody, for that. And we can move straight into our committees. And the first one on the slate for today is Protective Services. So I will go to Director Roberts.
Thank you. And I'll call the Protective Services Committee open at 1:08. Can I have a motion to adopt and second? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, thank you. Now we have the Crater Creek post-wildfire natural hazard risk analysis. I'd like to refer this to the CAO.
Thank you, Chair. This report, as stated by the Chair, is an information report to inform the Board on the preliminary results of the 2023 Crater Creek Post-Wildfire Natural Hazard Risk Analysis. Staff's here to answer any of the questions based on the information from the report.
All right. So could we have the presentation for?
No presentation. It just, the report is standalone. It's just if there's any questions based
Okay.
on the report.
Okay, so, is there any questions for Protective Services Department? Not seeing any. Calling once, calling twice. Boy, that was quick. I didn't even get warmed up. I see a hand.
Maybe I'll ask one question.
Area Director.
Thanks for that. I'm curious, is there any plan to seed, like even just grass seed, any of those areas that have been affected to stabilize those soils? Or is there any thoughts towards that?
I can't speak on behalf of the province, and they have not given any indication of activity that they will take beyond this at this point, but that's definitely a good recommendation that we could put forward.
Okay, I have Director Coyne Jr. and then I have Director Weep.
So there is some logging activity happening up on the, I guess, the western side of that fire. So once that logging is done, then there will be regen done as part of the contract. So.
And Director Weep.
And to follow up with Director Pendergraft, there, and I just can't find it right now, but there, the LSIB is doing some work up the Ashnola, and I give you the dates. I don't have it with me. And they are inviting people that want to come out to actually help with that process of kind of doing some of the repairs. And I apologize, didn't, you know, this wasn't in the report. So I did see it. I'm on a page with the LSIB where they kind of send out all kinds of information to community. And I do know, I believe it's I think it's next week, if I recall correct. There was like 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I'd have to take a look, and I'd have to try to find it. But you could contact the LSIB because I do know that there's some measures that they're taking, but I don't know the scope of it. But that's something that they are, it was advertised here. I'm looking at Director Roberts because I think you probably saw the same ad. So it's the last week or so that they put that out.
I have a question, so from Area G. In regards to the Ashnola Valley and in workings and discussions that I've had with the Lower Similkameen Indian Band, looking at some of the parts of the report when they're speaking about hazards and the increase in hazard in a lot of those areas, at the same time we have some properties up there that, again, in Area G, we don't have any zoning, so there's no bylaw there. But building happening in the midst of all this. Do we know whether or not the province themselves, with producing this report, is there any recommendation or any support in regards to maybe putting a hold in the meantime until they can deal with the hazards rebuilding? No. That was an in-depth. That just.
I'm sorry. That would be unlikely for the province to put a hold on building. It would probably have to come from the regional district.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions? I'm looking. Oh, Director Taylor.
Is there an after-action report of the fire from a more broader perspective in terms of just crisis management, emergency management, evaluation?
On this fire? Yeah, so there were after-action reports done on the 2023 fires. And there's a lot of actions that were recommended. And then there was also a review of the program that was done with a lot of recommendations and that we're working on. And This report will be part of our hazard risk and vulnerability analysis program that we'll be doing over the next 2 years. That it will feed into that information as well and come out with recommendations on the other side of that document. It will also help us in planning and preparedness, for response, et cetera, for that specific area, but also other areas that have been impacted in the same way within the regional district.
Thank you. I see a follow-up.
So I'm just, do those reports come to the board?
I believe they
And
do.
we've seen them?
Director Monteith?
Through the chair, yes, they did, it sort of changed the department and
Okay.
We dealt with this one. That's why she's here.
Pardon me, thank you. I'm 1 year removed from the fire.
No worries. Is there anybody else that wants to help add clarity? No, or any questions?
I would just add on that is that these documents do come out like a year, sometimes 2 to 3 years later, depending on the impact to the area and the province determination for the need. So it's not us that necessarily direct that. So we can encourage, but actual getting the province to look at the situation is at their discretion.
Thank you for that. I think a follow-up would be a question from myself. If you're in that process of that relationship or that discussion or dialogue with the province, is there any point in time that, it's an ability for, let's say, the directors to be able to find out where we're at in regards to those kinds of discussions?
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, looking for anybody else that has a question for Emergency Management Planning Department? No, I don't see any. Thank you very much. I'll pass this back. I don't see anything else on our agenda. So motion to adjourn? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Okay, thank you, Director Roberts. The next committee is Community Services, and I go to Director Monteith for that one.
thank you. I'd like to call for a motion to, adopt the agenda of community services. First, second, all in favor? Thank you. Moving on to a regional trails update to the CAO, please.
Thank you, Chair. The first on the agenda is Manager Parks is going to provide a regional trail update. Mr. Shuttleworth.
Thank you. Just waiting for a slideshow. It's more to help me out than it is for you guys. Keep me on track. Thanks for having me. It's been a while since there's been a trails update. I think a little over a year since anybody from our departments got up here and kind of talked about the whole program, and also some initiatives and some projects that are coming to light that are relative as you as a board review strategic plan and as you head into budget. The document on the screen now is our game plan for parks, recreation, and trails. So the trails element we've been following and still working away. A lot of it is still relative to what we started in 2011 when the first Trails Master Plan was done. And as we move forward, we'll continue to strive to achieve these goals. As always, I like to start with a map. I think the geography and rail trails in the region lend themselves exceptionally well to a regional trails network. When you look at the lay of the land and where those rail corridors are, they really do touch most of the communities in the region and lend themselves to a lot of fabulous landscapes and assets throughout the region. When we look at the regional trails program, we kind of divide them into 3 sections. We have the main line of the KVR. This runs from Chute Lake all the way through Princeton to our northern boundary. Few sections here of note. Adria Tunnel, which I'll talk on in detail in a minute. We have a gap through West Bench into Summerland. That is Penticton Indian Band's trail, and we'll again touch on that in a bit later. And then, as most of you probably remember, the Atmospheric River a few falls back devastated much of the trail that's north of Princeton. This section of trail is unique in that we manage this in a partnership with Rec Sites and Trails BC. We don't do this for the other two sections I'm going to talk about. The reason that is important is we have a member or a branch of senior government that does a lot of the heavy lifting, so to speak, for regional trails. A lot of the infrastructure work, a lot of that high-level maintenance that we're not equipped to do. They take care of that for us. The KVR South Spur is probably our most highly desired section of trail. I think it gets talked about the most. That's Penticton through to Osoyoos. It also has the biggest gaps, I think, for lots of reasons. Another Penticton Indian Band section, an Osoyoos Indian Band section, Vasa Lake, which is a highly coveted environmental reserve. And lots of it's frankly just been sold off. So we're looking for alternative routes to this area. This is one of those sections where we don't have a managing partner in Rec Sites and Trails. We deal directly with the land branch, so we don't have access to their engineers and their team. The Similkameen Trail. So this could potentially connect Headley to the border through Karameus and Coston. That's a pretty lofty dream. Right now, we're pretty focused on Karameus to Coston and those surrounding areas. We are working through some gaps. We still have one big outstanding gap between Coston and Karameus that's been going on for well over a decade now. We're also looking at some resurfacing options because that trail through much of it is, well, let's call it rustic. Trails implementation plan. We started this in 2013, I think we presented this board, and we still use it a bit of as our guide. There's 3 bodies of work, essentially, that we work in and day out for the program. There's an acquisition and management. There's the maintenance component. So what do we do? How are we maintaining the assets? And then there's the capital project component of it as well. This year, when I go through them, I'm going to highlight some different things. Sitting through this morning, always interesting to see alignments. I'm going to highlight governance because that's important as we go into the next couple of years, I feel, and infrastructure. So I'm just going to highlight those and we'll talk about those a bit more as we go through. So acquisition and management is really the administrative tasks related with trails. So trail connections, how are we acquiring land? How are we creating partnerships to connect the dots of the trail so we can keep this train moving? Use designations, dealing with public, also a part of this element, and quite often can be tough. The reason, again, governance is important. As I was mentioned, our relationship with Rec Sites and Trails and that partnership agreement. That is being reviewed by the province. And looking at how they did it. I think, the inconsistencies between one section of rail trail and another in the region sometimes doesn't make sense and leads to different challenges for us as a region. So they're looking at that. They're also looking at opportunities for us to become more the decision maker and be a little bit more nimble with decisions that are made on the trail. So whether that's done through different license occupations or different arrangements, we don't know yet, but that would be something that we would keep the board apprised of as we went through that. Maintenance, always the key part of our program. It's really what me and the team that I work with spend most of our time on. Really, vegetation management, a lot of garbages, a lot of just people use management, signage, comfort amenities. The thing that I think we're really realizing is that our need to maintain infrastructure and take a bigger lens from asset management and infrastructure management is growing and changing. Are we monitoring and maintaining ditches and culverts? Are they working well? And we're doing that before it leads to significant issues with the infrastructure. Capital projects, again, Building new stuff, always fun. Adria Tunnel, it's going to be awesome. We'll talk about that later. Trail connections, great surface, all that good stuff is really what we focused on for so many years. But infrastructure is an important piece of it, and I think it's something that we're going to look to do a better job and make sure we're setting the stage better to have infrastructure replacement plans, setting ourselves up better in a position to apply for grants. So that was the overview component, and then I'll talk about a few specific initiatives, projects that are going on that are an interest, and likely things that you will talk about again through strategic priorities and linkages to the strategic plan, and then also some budget implications along with that. So Adria Tunnel, let's get that one on. So Adria Tunnel's really neat. I don't know how many of you have been there. It's been closed for over a decade. It's a 500-meter long tunnel. It does a 180-degree turn almost in the mountain. There's a point in it that is true darkness. If you turn off your light, well, your cell phone light doesn't actually work in there. It is really dark. Very neat. That we're to open this spring. We're not going to make it this year. There's a few more structural things, and a few more engineering sign-offs to go to. This project is really donation-driven and in-kind works-driven. Reading the next report, there's a typo in there. They're up to $2 million in donations and in-kind work to open this tunnel, which is absolutely fantastic. Some of the neat things that are coming out of that tunnel, they installed a solar light array. So as you walk, it's dark, but the lights kind of slowly turn on and turn off with you. They removed 8,000 cubic meters of material out of that tunnel to open it, which is a lot of material. Not that I wasn't paying attention this morning, but I did some quick math. That's filling up this space roughly 50 times. So a lot of material, and 400 rock bolts I learned yesterday. So if you pay attention when you're driving on the highway, you'll see those quite often, but they put 400 to hold that tunnel together. So really great asset. I think it's going to be amazing for our community. But it's something that when the idea came through and we were working with the province to open this idea, we're the maintainers of that asset. So when it opens and we get the authorizations, the regional district's going to manage a tunnel. And that's new for us. Not to mention a really long one that has a history of stability issues and what comes along with it. So that'll be something that we talk about and we're planning for in our budget. So in Adria Tunnel for 2025, we'll have one outstanding capital request. Due to some of the winter activity in there, ice flows and some concerns there, we're going to be required to close that over the winter. Unfortunately, just putting up a run-of-the-mill gate is not going to work here. So we've put a request in to engineer in place gates on either end to lock those. Just learned the other day that we may be getting a grant thanks to the support at Thompson Okanagan Tourist Association for comfort and use amenities. So pit toilets, picnic tables, garbage cans, those sort of things. I'm just learning about this might be coming to light, but if that grant becomes available to us, it's something we'll probably want to take advantage of. From an acquisition and management perspective with the tunnel, we still have to sign and finish all our tenure documents to say the job is done, we're going to maintain it, and the RDOS is going to run with this from an operations perspective afterwards. One of the things that I look at every time I'm up there, there's a lot of traffic. People are already wanting to get in there. There's a lot of interest. How are people getting there? Are they still planning on driving up the KVR? Because you can still do that. The KVR was never designed for two-way traffic of motor vehicles. How are we managing that? So there's some work and thought that we're going to do into that over the winter to make sure that, people are getting an enjoyable experience when they're on the trail, but also, are you getting there on an appropriate pathway or road? We'll talk about this again, is the grant application. Grant application will actually be done in 2024 if it's approved today, but we're applying for the REDUP grant for the second track resurfacing. So from Glenfir up to the Adra Tunnel, which will improve the user experience for people that want to see that tunnel. Maintenance is new for us. So we've read some documents from the engineers. We know there's going to be more traffic. We know that we're going to have to be up there frequently to change those garbages and manage the site like we would. We're going to get traffic at Rock Evans Park we've never seen before. And it's usually a pretty quiet park. Rock Evans Park, if you get there, old growth forest, heritage structures from when they built the railway, very neat. But I think we're going to see some more traffic, so we're doing that. And the big piece of it is the tunnel. We'll need some engineered inspections regularly. Our staff will need to inspect it regularly. We're already dealing with stuff like vandalism. We've already had sent the crew up twice to deal with that. So that's just going to happen. So we're anticipating that there's going to be a $28,000 increase in operations budget just for Adra Tunnel alone next year. Skaha Lake Trestle, another big one, another landmark feature in the Okanagan. I think most people who drive up and down the South Okanagan recognize it and know it. Very popular recreational asset, connects OK Falls to the KVR. We did some preliminary work on it last year, and that trestle is starting to show its age. So it's going to need some work coming up. This year, we have a small amount of budget. We're going to continue on with that work, start the process of further engineering review, start doing some of the environmental works, working in streams, mussel surveys to set the stage for the applications for working in stream. As I noted earlier, we don't have Rec Sites and Trails as a partner on this one, so we're on our own on this one. The idea is, at this point, is to start accumulating some reserves, build some reserves, get this front-end work done, and start looking at grant applications to move this forward. So, as I just reviewed, we'll have some capital project work that you will see on the assessment preliminary work side. Acquisition and management, we're good on tenure. We actually have a tenure that permits us to do the works on it, take lead on it. Certainly want to be looking for grant applications. And I think this conversation is a really good example when we start talking to the province about governance of rail trails. This, to me, is the case study for the example we don't have a partnership with Rec Sites and Trails. Maintenance, not a lot there, but when we do start the works, communications will have to be well developed and accommodations for closures. Partnership work. So again, Penticton Indian Band, as I mentioned earlier, has some great sections of the trail, very key linkages when you look at our trail network. We're still in the early stages, but the idea on the table is that we would have a working group with Penticton Indian Band and other partners that would start realizing how to move forward on that and land those agreements. So we want to focus on that from a staff and administration perspective. And I think we also want to start thinking about what the cost implications are now of what those sections of trails will be if we do get those arrangements. So we want to start working on that now. Skaha Lake Skaha Lake section, Penticton to Cleedon, understand is, just an ideal setting. But right along the lake, lots of natural values there. West Bench, I think as many of you know, very significant geotechnical issues. I think we're going to look at putting some money aside to support Penticton Indian Band and researching and looking at those if they're willing. And then we've had a long-standing project I think most of you don't like that's been happening right in Cleedon with a land exchange with a private landowner adjacent to the trail and a relationship with Penticton Indian Band we've been developing for a long time. So we're going to keep working on those and trying to create those partnerships and collaborate with Penticton Indian Band. The province and Rec Sites and Trails, I'm going to go back to acknowledging the heavy lifting they do right now. The amount of infrastructure work that they have done over the last 2 or 3 years with their team is significant. Multiple bridges and culverts replaced, miles and miles of ditching. all of that work has gone on, and they have that funding in place till the end of 2026. They have confirmed funding for that. So when that ends, again, this is where I think the rubber will hit the road, so to speak, with that governance review and our tenure or how the RDOS participates in trails that are owned by the province. Grant applications. We've got a couple in the queue already. The Red Up grant that I've already mentioned. We're looking to put a reserve allocation and budget of $125,000 to gain $600,000 to resurface that section of trail. Skaha Trestle Engineering Assessment and Design. We don't have anything identified, but we're certainly trying to set the stage for that. Design works for the Similkameen Area G Trail. I knew Director Roberts would be looking at me, so I put this in. So we've applied for that grant a few times and not been successful. And although putting surface on a trail seems simple, we need to do an engineered design for that. So in order to be successful in our next grant application, we're going to look to do the engineered design for that section of trail and hopefully leverage some active transportation grants. 2025, kind of just some specific budget things we're looking at. Capital requests, $60,000 for that Adria Tunnel access gates. $75,000 is a placeholder for the West Bench KVR geotechnical. We have a capital carry forward of $118,000 for the Skaha Lake Trestle. Operationally, I think we're sitting pretty well, even with some changes in maintenance requirements to do the upkeep after wreck sites and trails has done the ditching and the culvert work. I think we're in a good place there, but the tunnel is the driver for an increase operationally for regional trails. And some increases to reserves. And last year, I don't really think we put any into reserves. It was next to nothing. So this year, we're going to suggest some significant increases for you to consider at budget. So the $125,000 to support the Red Up grant, $200,000 as a partnership. I'm calling it a partnership placeholder, but opportunities with TODA grants, even with Penticton Indian Band, is there some money in there to leverage the next steps of the program? And although not in the 2025 budget, starting to put away some significant reserves for that Skaha Lake Trestle. Oh, I made it. That's the end.
Thank you. Question from Director Coyne.
I got lots. Let's start with the easy stuff. Princeton to Summerland or Summerland to Princeton. Do you have a work plan? There's like resurfacing. It's pretty rough in some spots up there, thanks to ATVs and whatnot. So what's the plan on there? And then the second one is the trestle outside of Princeton going towards Tulameen. And then do we have an alternative plan for getting to Tulameen, since we're cut off from there all the way up to Brookmere now? So none of that's in your presentation there. And you know, it's been a huge blow to our tourism economy, because nobody can really use the trail anymore.
Mr. Shuttleworth.
So Summerland to Princeton, it's been infrastructure focused to date. So we haven't really put a concerted effort into surface improvements. That doesn't mean that can't make it on the list, but that's certainly not something that we have kind of looked at in depth at this point in time. Princeton to Tulameen, I agree with you. I had a talk with the provincial trails manager a couple of weeks ago. They're still waiting for a decision from their ministers on what the next steps are. They've spent quite a bit of time engineering feasibility. Can we put the trail back where it was? What are the alternates? I believe are all on the table for that, but they don't have an answer for us at this time.
Yeah, so the Princeton up to Summerland direction, if we're not going to be doing anything on the Tulameen side, I'd really like to see some sort of effort put into that section of trail, because we still have a tunnel up there, we have bridges up there, we have things people can go look at, but right now there's, you know, you got to ride straight up the mountain to get up above Jura, and then it's not the easiest climb, especially if you're on a bicycle.
Thank you. Any other questions? I guess, okay. Director Bloomfield.
Yeah, thank you, and through the chair. And you touched on potential working relationships with First Nations on the stretch of the trail through from West Bench through PIB land. And so the Trails of the Okanagans is a group that is trying to promote and define that trail from the Kelowna Bridge right down to the border. And I spoke to them some months ago. I'm just wondering, have you met them? Have you formed a working relationship with that group?
Mr. Shuttleworth.
Yes, our previous managing director had conversations with them. Since I've picked up the file in July, I've just had a few conversations with Penticton Indian Band. When we get this working group going, I think that's where we'll start bringing in those groups again.
Thank you. Mr. Holmes.
Yeah, and I think perhaps Julius and I can also help out on the political level for that as well. We ought to be, and Riley. Yeah, there too. Yeah, she can help out. I just my question is, what determines whether rec sites and trails can be a partner or not?
Mr. Shuttleworth.
To be honest, I don't know. I think that's one of the questions that we look forward to finding through this review. If I was to, kind of some high-level discussions with him, is that the vision when the province bought the rail trail asset was this very long east-west linear corridor. In the case of the South Spur, it didn't meet that definition at that time of that connection east to west and through the province. The rail corridor in the Silver Mill Community Valley, actually, rec sites and trails doesn't manage that. They're not the land manager side. It actually is through the BC Transportation Finance Authority, which is the finance wing of Ministry of Transportation. So they, again, totally different relationship with them. Our permit on the land is different to maintain that trail.
Just going back to the West Bench Trail, my last meeting with PIB, they just brought it up and said that they're still interested in this. And Mr. Shuttleworth and Mark Kosh will be making that a priority for the next few months.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you. I appreciate you having that on the screen, because yes, I was going to speak about it. My question being, waiting for a grant that again may not happen. I'm willing and looking at what kind of funds I have in gas taxes, because I've got of the area that's in Area G, 1/3 that's not passable, and the ballast being taken away by local farmers. So, I really want to see that from Bex to the village solidified and then resurfaced, because, let alone trying to get a walker on that. Kids can't even bicycle on it unless they've got a fully suspensioned bicycle. But anyways, I appreciate what you've done so far. My concern is in the past, we've waited for long. We were talking about grants as a whole because of the Sparkford Estates piece. But of course, we just can't wait for that. That's now been 13 years. I'm not going to hold my breath. It's going to happen tomorrow. So really appreciate the fact that you've put it on a priority list, and I'd like to do whatever I can to help move this forward. Thank you.
Through the chair to Mr. Shuttleworth. And first off, thanks for the presentation, informative. Is there any updates on if you're working on the SCA trestle? There's been discussion over the years of jumping platforms to formalize that and address the liability. So I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity to deal with both of those at the same time with that part of the provincial government.
So there's two different tenures in play here. There's the linear tenure for the rail trail, and that's what we can do the structural works and keep going with what we're doing in regards to the trestle itself. Future works, we applied for tenure a few years back when we talked about the jumping off the trestle and formalizing that work. We put a second application in, which was put on hold, which is now back in the queue, I believe. And that will allow us to build a jumping and manage a jumping platform formally. Really, we can't really do the jumping platform until we have the structure squared away. So I'm thinking the sequence will work well, but we are working on that jumping platform as well.
Yeah, thank you to the chair. I just wanted to recognize staff and the efforts that you put in around that West Bench Trail. It's such an excellent linkage for our area. So I appreciate that you building those relationships. And I think there's also an administrative recommendation. So I'm happy to move the recommendation around the grant. That's the next one?
That's the next one.
Oh, fantastic. I'll do it later.
Thank you, through the chair. Not really a question, but just a comment to put out to just kind of thank the donors and those that have put in all this time and effort into the Adria Tunnel. It will be, a significant asset for our region and just the economic drivers that it'll bring. So just thank you to them, and then thank you for staff for working with this group, and then the journey ahead with this.
It's not something that I participated in. It would be something we'd have to take back and look at.
Yeah, the Adria Tunnel, is that going to come out of, is all the funding going to come out of regional trails, or is that going to, like, how are we going to fund that? Because I know, what are you asking for, 28 right now, plus 60,000 for doors or gates, and, it's going to get really expensive really fast to maintain that section of the trail, and I don't think Naramata can pay for it all themselves. So is this going to always be a regional trail funding, or is the parks going to, like, how do you guys foresee that moving forward? Because it's going to cost a lot of money down the road.
Operations budgets, so the maintenance, daily routine upkeep, annual upkeep, we have funded through the regional trails program. So keeping the linear asset working has been how we've approached regional trails. Capital projects has been done a variety of different ways. Director Roberts just mentioned funding through gas tax surface improvements, but we've also used the reserves out of regional trails for other projects. So there has not been a consistent approach to that.
Oh, thank you, and back on again. Director Pendergraft.
Thank you. I'm curious if there's any news in regards to the tenure application between Osuyas and Oliver along the Canal Trail. I think we're pushing 6, maybe 7 years.
It's not quite that much, but it's still too long. I got an email back from that ministry last week, and it is the same disappointing news that I have received for the last 4 years. That it's just not moved to an active file yet.
To an active file?
Yeah, so it is in the application holding area and has not been released for a file manager to action yet.
Thank you. Director Taylor.
Yeah, just along similar lines, I guess, putting other things in the queue and just seeing where they're at. The issue of getting past Bassaw Lake, whether east or west, if there's any further plan, discussion, thoughts on how to do that.
Things have been pretty slow. I think we hit a wall a couple years back, and we really haven't re-engaged that. I think it's, well, for Bassaw Lake, it's always timely. Again, 20 years, I think people have been very actively trying to figure out a way through that section of trails. So, but is not something that we've had active conversations on recently.
Director Van Elfen.
Thank you through the chair. Just for your awareness, and I'm sure you're well aware, but as Director Bloomfield said, the Trails of the Okanagan from Kelowna, well, actually Sicamous eventually to a Soyuz border, goes directly through Summerland, Garnet Valley Road, and the Ministry of Mines and Climate Adaptation just awarded a gravel extraction to a private piece of land. So this narrow Garnet Valley Road, which is a bike corridor, could be in serious jeopardy in the future. So I just thought, give you a heads up. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you for your presentation. Okay, so moving on to Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program Grant Application. CAO.
Thank you, Chair. This report is for the board requests to apply for a $600,000 grant to upgrade an 8-kilometer segment of the Kettle Valley Railway. The grant funds may also be used not just for the paving, but for benches, tables, and signs. And the recommended motion is that the regional district submit a grant application under the Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program for resurfacing an 8-kilometer section of the KVR Trail above Naramata between Glenfir Park and Adra Tunnel. Staff's here to answer questions.
Thank you. I think Director Gettins had a motion.
I'm just going to defer to the director. I'll second it.
Okay, sounds like the motion's on the table. Any discussion? Director Roberts.
Thank you to the chair. Sorry, I forgot. I did read the article, but I was wondering what is the percentage of that 600 in regards to shares at an 80-20 or a...
Correct, 80-20.
Director Gettins.
Thanks. I'm just curious how much is in our, I'm fully on board with this, obviously, but how much is in our reserves for regional trails?
CAO.
I will research it while the board talks the next report, because I've got access to it.
Okay. Any other questions? Do you want to wait to vote or wait for that information? Have the vote? What's the will of the board?
Sorry. Yeah, I'm fine with the vote. I was just curious. Yeah.
Okay. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? All in favor. Thank you. As there's no further business, I would like to motion to adjourn. Thank you. To the CAO, please. Or sorry, to the chair.
Thank you, Director Monteith. That brings us to Environment and Infrastructure, and I go to Director Taylor for this one.
Okay, thanks, Chair Pendergraft. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 1:50. Can I have a motion to accept the agenda, please? Move, seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Okay, our first item, our only item, is a discussion of curbside cart rollouts and buyback program. I'm going to refer to the CAO for introduction of that piece, please.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek direction in relation to the incorporation of the existing resident supply cart for the new automated collection system commencing July 1st, 2025. Additionally, an update of the planned activities for the changing curbside program will be provided in a presentation that staff will be making in a few minutes. The recommended motion is that the regional board direct staff to incorporate existing resident supply carts to the new automated curbside collection program commencing July 1st, 2025, providing the carts meet the established requirements of the program. And staff's here to answer your questions along with the presentation.
Go ahead, Ms. Bloomfield.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just want to just quickly say something and then pass it over to Cameron Bond. We brought him in as a contractor, as our subject expert on rolling out our CART program. So I think I will just turn it right on over to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Cameron Bond. I was an employee here for 16 and a half years, so I have some experience. Currently, I'm also a part-time employee with the District of Summerland. My background is solid waste. I basically 20-year career in solid waste. I've got a lot of background at the provincial level as well now, and boards and committees. So this is a program that's been done in many other communities, and I'll be talking about some of the best practices that we've learned and how we'll be applying this for the rollout of carts in the rural RDOS. So which button? Oh, okay, thank you. So as many of you know, we have signed a new collection contract with the regional district with Waste Connections of Canada. They are our current collector. This was also signed by the District of Summerland, City of Penticton, Town of Oliver and Osoyoos, and the Village of Karamias, which is under the RDOS contract. This current contract for the RDOS affects all participating electoral areas, which is all electoral areas except for electoral area H and the Village of Karamias. The RDOS in this contract is required to supply 3 carts to all households by July 1st, 2025, and we expect the delivery of these carts to commence as of June. Currently, there's cart communities in our area. The City of Penticton, the Town of Oliver, and the District of Summerland all have carts. Currently, they provide carts for garbage, yard waste, organics, and recycling. The Regional District of Central Okanagan, which has got some more rural areas similar to some of the RDOS, they currently provide carts to all of their residential households as well, and to all their member municipalities. And then there's various municipalities and regional districts across BC that currently supply carts as part of their collection program. What we've learned is that once established, residents like the system. We say once established, there is definitely any change of this which affects people's day-to-day activities can be quite stressful or be something that people are worried about. We do understand also that these carts prevent worker injuries, which is an important aspect to why when we see these bids come in from these companies that we're working with, they don't want to see their employees get hurt. Generally with semi-automated collection where you're lifting a garbage can and you put it over your head, any kind of above the shoulder kind of lifting or shaking leads to shoulder injuries. It also allows more people to be drivers. We've seen this be a case where in communities there's been people that might be generally smaller, not as strong, that can then become drivers because it allows them to be inside the vehicle and not physically lifting these carts. What we've learned the most, though, is you really need to follow best practices for these rollouts. And if you do it right from the beginning and learn from these other communities, you can both lower costs and confusion in your community. General concerns we will see as we are going to be moving out to do some consultation with communities. We know size will be an issue, both where they're going to place it on their property, as well as to what sizes of carts are available. Storage space in terms of where they're going to keep the carts. That includes animal attractants. Are they going to be able to keep animals outside of these carts? How will they transport on the property if they have long driveways, especially rural areas, which might have kilometer-long driveways? Wintertime and snow removal is a common issue. Additional waste, how do they handle those bags or other materials that they have there, be yard waste or garbage or recycling? And then the use of existing carts, which we'll be bringing forward as a motion today to this committee. Placement of the curb. So when you do this, you have to allow space between the carts to provide enough space for the paddles that come out to collect it. We'll be using a fully automated collection as of July 1st. The driver will not get out of the vehicle. These paddles will come out. They will grab the cart. The cart will then be lifted up and dropped into the hopper. So these requirements, you can see, are a 3-meter height requirement and 1-meter requirement needs to be assessed for all the properties which receive carts. One of the things that's worked quite well in other communities is disability exemption forms. This means that people that have the inability to get their materials out to the curb, or if they have problems getting the carts to the curb itself, can apply to the RDOS, and our contractor will then assist them in terms of getting those carts to the proper location so they can be mechanically lifted. We also recognize that the review will be reviewing options with especially mobile home parks or other areas that have limited space, hard to drive private roads. Each of these types of properties will be assessed, and we'll be working towards identifying them and working directly with the property owners to identify how we can best provide cart collection. In wintertime, this is the standard practice. The householders would have to make sure that they clear a space. They can't place these carts on top of banks. So they can't place them in an area that will be hit by a snowplow. It has to be on their property. So these are the type of techniques that communities have used. I believe I got this maybe from the city of Penticton, just showing where and how you can place out carts to ensure your car can get in and out, but it's not going to be struck or hit by anyone driving or by a snowplow. Bear resistant carts, so we'll be looking at options for this through our procurement processes. Commonly though, when we talk to the city of Kamloops and the city of Castlegar, these are the type of carts that they found to be most successful. These are clip-based carts that they would then allow the residents to keep clips shut when the materials are not being collected. The residents would then unclip on the day of collection. So they would go out and unclip it to allow this material to drop out of the cart itself. We want to provide this as an additional option for residents. We're not, from our experience in BC, this isn't something we want to roll out to all areas. You want to make sure the residents have this as an option though, because there are many other ways to reduce bear interactions, including not placing out garbage until the day of collection, which is by far the best way of dealing with bears in any area. Don't place out your garbage or stinky materials until the day of collection. If you put it out the night before, it's not going to work. It will attract animals to your property. That's the same right now for what we collect without carts and with carts as well. What we're seeing here is 3 main sizes of carts. You want to standardize as much as possible so that the carts have the same wheels, the same lids, the same bodies. So when we see what's happening in communities, they generally stick to 3 types of carts, 120 liters, 240 liters, or 360 liters. So I can call them small, medium, and large. In general, these are the most common sizes used across British Columbia. What we're advising for a standard package, which would be the one that's delivered to the majority of homes, will be 120 liter garbage, 240 liter recycle, and 240 liter yard waste. What we are looking at providing as well is the ability for larger garbage carts to be available. There will be an extra cost, as I will discuss. A larger recycle cart for those properties that need it. And then a smaller yard waste cart for those communities that don't really need yard waste. And we see that in many rural areas where they don't need it, but they will need it for when we start food scraps collection, which is an objective for the solid waste management plan for the RDOS. The residents we're going to be providing through consultation, I'll be describing in a few slides, will allow them to provide the best choices for them for their property. Do they need larger garbage? Maybe they do. This will give them those options. And all those options will have different costs as compared to the standard base one, which we assume most properties will use. We've seen 120 liter garbage and 240 liter recycle and 240 yard waste in both Penticton, Summerland, and also Oliver. We see that in the central Okanagan as well. This is a standard package that works quite well, but by providing options, we give people the ability to best manage materials on their property. Our advice, and this is only recommended, is that this will be going through the board in terms of fees and charges, but we're recommending that for a larger garbage cart, you would spend $5 extra per month. This covers the cost of both the tipping fees and the extra size of the cart. For an extra, 100% extra 240 liter cart, so you have 2 240 liter carts in your property, we'd be looking at charge about $5 per month. And then there'd be no charge for an extra size. And then again, for a bear resistant cart, which would be an option, we would then ask them to pay $4 extra per month. This would be over the base fees that every property pays. So through the budget this year, you will be determining what the user fees will be for every community. There are different budgets for the different communities that you guys represent in the rural areas and the village of Karamias. These will be additional costs as options for those households. If they choose this, they would pay those extra fees. And this is what we're trying to get to, is that there are costs to this to provide extra service for yard waste or for garbage. There'd be no cost for additional sizes for recycle. And then if you wanted a bear cart, you would pay more per month for this service. Have a question? Keep going?
Thank you.
Go ahead, Director Frederica.
Thank you to the chair. So like our community is a bear aware community, which we would like to maintain. And I'm sure most of our rural communities would like to maintain that. So what we're saying here is that to maintain that and to encourage that, we're now charging everybody $4 extra a month to have a bear resistant cart, supposed to just rolling that out as a standard cart to discourage. wildlife interactions.
Staff?
Yeah, thank you. So currently that is how it operates today. People in Naramata, for example, may rent a bear-resistant cart from Waste Connections of Canada. They may also provide their own waste cart at their own cost. So that is something that today happens. What we are suggesting is that when people have the options, the clearest and best option to manage bear attractants is to place out materials only on the day of collection. Where we see that there's an option in place, the City of Kamloops ran a pilot study where they rolled this out to everybody in the pilot study area. Many people did not use the cart effectively. They did not lock the cart, and it wasn't an effective use of funds. Where there was an optional program, they found the people that were paying for that service to have the extra bear cart used the cart effectively and kept it locked until the day of collection. To provide this as a blanket service would be very expensive for anyone, and we're not recommending that this bear-resistant cart be applied as a whole to an area, as it has not been found to be effective, because the householders that don't want it will just not use it, and you've spent a lot of money, probably 4 to 5 times the price of a cart, and you're not getting the benefit of it being locked when it needs to be locked to reduce bear interactions.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. Any other questions? Are you going to carry on further?
Yes, please.
Good, okay.
So we are recommending through the fees and charges bylaw when it comes out at $45 per home for cart changeouts. How we can avoid this fee would be that by using the public consultation we'll be doing this year, residents will be allowed to upsize or downsize their carts at no charge. So that would allow them to get that done without a changeout fee. Changeouts generally occur after the rollout period, and that would mean that if someone wants a change of their cart sizes or type of style of cart, they would then need to pay that $45 to allow us to do the cart changeout for them. That does cover the cost that we will be charged to provide that changeout service. So we're trying to do as much as we can this year through consultation to get the right size carts for the communities and for the properties, and let them know what those cost differences might be so they understand, well, if I want a larger garbage cart and I'm willing to pay that amount, I can save on this changeout cost. We're also going to be recommending that tag-a-bag stickers go up in price. We are definitely the lowest tag-a-bag sticker pricing anywhere in this part of BC. We haven't raised it for 20 years. Currently, you're not even breaking even under your present contract, and prices are going up under the next contract. So we are advising that the price of tag-a-bags as of July 2025 go up to $250. So this will be part of our awareness for the public, so they know when they consider getting a larger cart or using tag-a-bags, which will be at least 2 of the options, including bringing materials to the landfill, what is the best option for them in terms of managing garbage on their property. We are today also advising the board that we'd like to consider the use of existing carts. There are a number of customers in the regional district that have purchased their own carts. We currently have a semi-automated collection that allows a lifting arm to grab a cart by a bar in its front, to lower it, to put it into our collection system. Those carts are there now and they still have value. What we're asking today is for staff to be allowed to assess the carts, to provide a rebate. That would have to be worked out through our fees and charges bylaw, what that rebate will be. Then the RDOS, through the form that would be signed by the customer, we would then own the cart. And when the cart is broken, because these carts will break, they have a limited lifetime, sometimes 15, sometimes 20 years. Then when the cart breaks, we would replace it with an RDOS cart and it would be part of our system. And this option, again, is for consideration today by the committee. We will be hosting open house events. This is again up to the board's discretion. Currently, we've booked open house events in Penticton, Karamias, Oliver, Osceola, and Okanagan Falls. We would encourage direction if we want to do more open houses. Remember, there is a cost for your service area if we do more open houses. We will also be doing an online open house that we'll be recording for YouTube to allow people to understand more about the different cart sizes and options. We've already set this up for mid-November, and we'll be providing presentations and questions. You can see this is actually a picture from about 7 or 8 years ago when we did a similar open house for communities across the RDOS. So this is something we've already done before in some communities. Our next step, we are working on procurement for over 30,000 carts. This is a procurement process we'll be working closely with Waste Connections of Canada on. We'll be doing our public education campaign starting. This meeting is actually one of the kickoffs of our public education. Open houses will be occurring in November. We'll be having a survey to allow people to choose the best cart sizes for their property and the different cost options that will be closing in December. And then we expect to see carts hitting the ground in June of next year for July 1st start of the contract period. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further comments from Ms. Bloomfield? No? Okay. Questions? Got Mr. Pendergraft. You.
Okay, thank you. My question is tag-a-bags. How is that going to work when we have to use carts? There's no more bags. Can you explain that one? And the second one would be, I'll just answer the first one and then I'll get the second.
So currently Penticton, Summerland, and all of our examples, they provide tag-a-bag stickers for their cart programs. The physical thing is the driver gets out of the vehicle. First they empty the garbage cart. So the cart is then emptied. Then they come out of the vehicle and they place the tagged bag into that cart. They go back into the vehicle and they empty it and place the cart back at the side of the road. That's why the cost is going up for tag-a-bags, because of that extra step for the operator. But it is functional and it works quite well in all communities where they do it.
Okay. And the second question was, I think it was listed on the options for upsizing that for the yard waste, you started with the 240 was the recommended, but you only had the option of going down. Is there the option to go up for that one?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Bond.
Thank you. So in terms of the slides, yeah, we couldn't get all our options on there. What has worked well in other communities is if you require more service, we would give you a second 240 cart, and that would be $5 per month. To go down in terms of sizes, to get a 120 cart, there'd be no change in terms of your base fee charges, so it would be $0. And what we expect, because this is what happened in Summerland, there will be some properties that don't need yard waste carts, but they will need it for food scraps. So I'm recommending that the RDOS purchase those carts in advance, because the procurement would allow you to get those carts at a very reasonable price because you're ordering 30,000 of them. They may not be placed at the property until food scraps collection starts. So those 120 units would be available. People could downsize, or if they decide, I don't need a yard waste cart, which could be some communities, both small properties and large, then that would be an option provided to those residents as well.
Okay, thank you.
Next, Director Roberts.
Thank you, through the chair. I'd like to make sure that Headley has an open house, strictly because if it's Princeton isn't a part of this, so that's the furthest out in the regional district, so I will definitely need that there. Thank you.
Noted. I think I've got Director Monteith and then Director Bush.
Thank you, through the chair. So, Cam, you mentioned that the regional district would be buying these carts, but it's actually the taxpayers that's buying the carts. I guess I'm looking for is it better for taxpayers to go out and buy their own bins at Rona for $150? Is it cheaper in the long run? I guess I'm looking for that information, because that's kind of critical for people to make those decisions. And people are asking, should they go out and buy cans now? And I'm like, well, we don't know what we're doing yet, so I need some more direction.
Mr. Bond?
For clarity, no, the taxpayers are not purchasing these carts. They will not be purchasing. We will purchase the carts and provide a service, and those carts will be part of the service. I'm not aware of any communities that do fully automated collection, which is what we're doing, that makes the residents purchase the carts. In almost all cases, it's much more cost effective, and the only way for us to standardize it is if the regional district or local government purchases the carts and provides them. So for example, the city of Penticton, the district of Summerland, and the town of Oliver own those 3 carts at your property. It's clearly identified on the cart that it's the property of the local authority or local government, and they would then maintain and then replace them at end of life. So you're paying a service charge to access those carts, and it's part of the collection program, and property remains with the local authority, which in this case would be the Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen. To your second point, no, it would be a bad idea to buy a cart right now. Rona is selling them between $105 to $150. We can get them for about $45. So when you buy 30,000 of something, it is much cheaper than one of one thing. You're not paying retail pricing. What we're asking today, though, is for the board to consider the option of allowing us to incorporate valuable assets that are already out in the community, where people have purchased them from, say, Rona or Home Hardware. They spent the $105 or $150 for that cart. If we can go along and we can sticker them, and through a waiver process, we would then own those carts, so that if they break during the process of using them, we would just replace them with one of ours. It's for me, and this is why I believe this is a program for the board to consider, is that it is of benefit because the capital's there, people have spent the money. For over the next year, we're certainly not advising people to purchase more carts, as it will be a much higher cost than we can supply them for as part of our program through our base cost. Even the extra $5 to get a 240-liter cart is much less than spending that on buying a 240-liter cart. There's no mathematical advantage to going out and buying a cart right now for yourself. But if the carts are already there, and especially those bear carts that the RDOS actually sold via our Bearware program, our Wild Safe BC program, to areas such as West Bench and Anarchist area, using those carts would make a lot of sense for capital. And I can also say that we are in discussions with Waste Connections of Canada, as in many regions of the rural area, Waste Connections of Canada currently rents carts. It's sitting capital already at the driveways. So if we can incorporate those and buy them from Waste Connections, and they're now RDOS property, it'd be much easier for the capital and the money that we're going to be spending on buying these carts. And then as they break, we would then incorporate and replace them. So that's what we're looking at now, is how can we make the customers, the residents that have invested their money on these carts, how can we get the best value for them and still allow them to be part of the program?
Okay, thanks. Helpful. Very.
Yeah, and just to
Ms.
add a
Bloomfield.
little bit to that as well, not all the store purchase carts will be eligible to be used in this. There will be some that are not the right thickness, they're not the right size, they don't have the right, just the right features that Waste Connections of Canada needs in order to do the automated collection.
Thank you. Director Bush.
Yeah. So will the cost of carts be allocated to each area? And if so, can we go use our gas tax or community funding to fund it?
Ms. Bloomfield?
Yes, the way it's broken down is each of the areas that do the curbside budgets I've set up a capital budget for each of them, which has the cart cost built into that. And then that'll be another discussion on another day as for how each area director wants to pay for the carts.
And two more quick questions. Sorry.
No, it's all right. We'll follow up with Dr.
Will
Bush.
garbage still be once a week, or is it going to be twice a week now? Or once every 2 weeks?
The garbage will be once a week
Still,
right
yeah,
now. Yeah,
okay.
it'll
And
stay.
then, so if I don't need a compost cart or a, whatever you call it, food scrap cart, because we live on a farm, we use up everything we got, do I have to have one? Can I say, no, I don't want another cart? I don't want another cart sitting there doing nothing.
Okay, Mr. Bond?
Yeah, so what we're trying to do in this year, to give us the idea of how much money we need to spend on things, is to figure out what size people need. If, say, because we'll be providing a survey and you fill it in for your property, we then know that you don't require a yard waste cart now. What I'd recommend to the RDOS to consider is we still purchase a 120-liter green top cart that would not be delivered, but would be stored somewhere safely, because the cost to purchase it when you're buying 30,000 of them is very low. And we do have space in the RDOS that we could store these on. We'd probably wrap them up and make sure they don't get broken down under the sun or something. But when food collection starts, which is a direction of the Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen, and one that we'll have to consider, we would then have those carts available that we would then deliver at no cost to the resident as part of that food scraps rollout program, just to allow that you would have to have that cart at that stage. Currently, there is no direction on the timeline for that food scraps collection, but we understand it will probably be within the 7 years of this contract. So we want to have those carts available, but maybe not delivered to your property. So by doing the survey, our intent is to understand what works for you. And if you don't need a yard waste cart, great. The RDOS can then consider whether they want to purchase the 120-liter cart now, or if they want to wait until food scraps collection, that will be determined at that time.
Thank you. Just to follow up, so if a property doesn't want compost collection, do they still pay for that service?
Ms. Bloomfield.
Yes, yes, they will.
Okay, I have, okay, well, let's go to Director Kanoto first. I don't want you falling off the chair for that.
Just in RDCO, the yard waste and food waste is in the same cart. Why can we not do that here?
Okay, I think we would be, but let's go to Mr. Bond.
Well, the Central Okanagan Regional District currently does not provide food scraps collection, but the District of Summerland does. So the District of Summerland does provide yard waste and food waste collection. Under the current feasibility studies, that's all we can go by right now until we have a site. We would be looking at using those green top carts, the yard waste carts, for food scraps collection and yard waste collection. That is the best understanding of what we have now until we actually have the food scraps collection understood. So that's what we would do is limit the number of carts on a property to 3, even if we transition to food scraps collection, as is the potential under both the contract with Waste Connections of Canada and the direction of the solid waste management plan.
Thank you.
That's enough, I take it. Okay, I have Director Holmes, Coyne, Roberts, and that's it.
Yeah, I just want to say I myself am a curbside cart convert. When it first came to Summerland Council, I voted against it. I remember that. That was quite a few years ago now. But since that time, since we've had it, I see how much more efficient it is, how much easier it is for residents. For tag bags, I don't think they're used very often anymore. You can stuff a lot of garbage in those carts, a lot more than like 3 bags or something like that. And the big thing, which I had no idea, nobody had any idea, but what really changed is that when the truck comes around now, it's the same time every week. Whereas before, you never knew when it was going to come along. And so you didn't really know when to put your garbage out. But now it's like it's consistent. Every single week it comes at the same time, so which helps for when to put that garbage out and for bears and all that sort of stuff. And so that was kind of an added bonus. So yeah, they've been great.
Okay, no question there, just comment. Thank you. Director Coyne.
I just want to clarify a comment you made, Ms. Bloomfield. Director Bush said, is this every week or every other week? Because I thought the new contract was every other week, and then you said it's every week.
Ms. Bloomfield?
Yeah, the contract was set up to assume that food waste collection was going to start right away on July 1st. We don't have the facility operational, so we cannot start the food waste collection every week. The food waste was supposed to be every week. The garbage would be alternating with the recycling. We can't do that yet because we don't have the facility to take the food waste to. So we're going to revert back to the way it is right now, garbage every week, and then alternating the recycling and the yard waste.
No, that's just good because there was a lot of discussion about this, that it was every other week. And there was a lot of people, especially like in the more remote areas, going, that's a long time. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have Director Roberts, Weeb, and then Monteith.
Thank you, the chair. So we do know the costs in regards to budgets, and we're moving forward in regards to the program itself. Now I'm assuming that the precursor to this, which like was already stated in regards to people coming out to Headley or et cetera, is going to come at a cost. And on top of it, going out and assessing people's garbage cans wherever they may be. So in regards to that cost that's going to happen between now and June, how is that being allocated? Thanks.
Ms. Bloomfield?
We were going to allocate it right out to the different curbside budgets. there is some room in there for public education advertising, but likely it would be more than what was budgeted.
I have Director Monteith, then I have Weeb, Bloomfield, and Gettins.
Thank you. Through the chair, I've heard from residents that one garbage bin is not going to be enough for yard waste. Like some families are putting out 20, 30 bags on, weekly collection for yard waste because they have large holding properties that they're, trying to clean up and be fire smart. But you mentioned only having 3 bins. There's no possibility for a 4th bin for yard waste?
Mr. Bond?
Well, we have factored in, and we did present on, you can have a second bin for yard waste, and that would be part of the program cost plus $5 per month. So that would be the 4th cart on your property, but it would be your choice. We also, and this is, I believe, you can maybe answer better than I can, we did recommend budgeting unlimited yard waste collections at least twice a year, both in the spring and in the fall, and maybe you can speak to that.
Ms. Bloomfield?
Yeah, we have in the budgets, we have planned for 2 unlimited events in the spring and 2 in the fall.
Through the contract, they will be bagged, but not in cans. The big change that's occurring for the unlimited collection that we'll have to get out to residents is that for these unlimited collections after July 2025, any kind of cans will not be allowed. You'll have to use bags or bundles. This is due to worker injury again. That wasn't part of this presentation, but it is in the contract that there will be a requirement that no customer supply containers like garbage cans be used for yard waste after July 2025.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Bond. Did you have anything further that you wanted to add to that? No. Okay. Director Weeb. Sorry, have I missed somebody?
No, I just don't understand the answer.
All right. You'd like further clarification on this?
Yeah.
All right. What would you like clarified?
What's the difference of somebody lifting a bag and somebody lifting a can?
Go
ahead, Mr. Bond.
Yeah, do you have an answer?
You guys signed a contract. I didn't sign that contract. Sorry. I'm telling you what it said. That's the District of Summerland too, Mayor Holmes. So I just want to be honest with you here. It will be a change for residents. Many people have the stickers. We still have like thousands of them here that say yard waste only on them. It was something that the contracts for all parties that signed to this RFP that was awarded, they said full stop, unlimited collections for yard waste will not allow us to do customer supply containers. They must be in paper bags for yard waste, or they must be in bundles for bundles. And that's in the contract for all 5 contracts that were signed through that RFP process.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Bond. Okay, now, Director Weeb.
So maybe I'm the only one through the chair. We signed on to an agreement that my understanding now isn't exactly how we're proceeding, but sounds like our fees are going to stay the same regardless of how we amend the contract moving forward. I also understand that we've been working on the food waste thing for, I want to say 10 years, but might be longer than that. We're paying for carts for a service that may or may not get off the ground in the next 10 years. My understanding is the ALC hasn't changed their mind. I'm a little bit concerned because it seems like the numbers in the contract are moving. Well, actually, the numbers aren't moving. Everything about the contract is except for the numbers. And I'm a little concerned because it sounds like we're paying for a lot of stuff that we agreed to because we were kind of felt like we had to agree to. And now, after we've agreed to it, things are changing. And I'm going to say I'm a little uncomfortable with, it feels like we did one thing, everything stopped moving, and now everything started moving again. So my question is, am I accurate in kind of my concerns and where we're at and where we might be going? And that we could end up paying for essentially a contract that we're not needing at a significantly higher cost to our residents than what we agreed to at the time.
Okay. CAO or Ms. Bloom? Oh, I'll look to the CAO.
I can start with that. First of all, the business plan that the board agreed to, and first of all, the contract that was was black and white. We had no choice in that. The business plan, though, that was a worst case scenario. You are going to find that the costs, the increased costs that you see here, the different costs are going to be more than supplemented with the reduced costs that the budget, you're going to see the budget. So there, worst case, there's movement, and it's from what I see, it's going to be in the right direction. One of the things that the business plan had is a worst case scenario for the life of the bin. So that is going to be reduced. The maintenance of the bin will be reduced. So we're looking at realistic rather than worst case. Anytime we receive anything from finance, you're always going to get the worst case scenario, just like the sewer and water that we would take over for borrowing.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bloomfield, anything further?
Yeah, the automatic collection is going to happen regardless of whether or not we do this food scraps collection. The going to the 3-cart system is going to happen anyway. What we're doing is we're just deferring the organics portion of it. The trucks would still be coming out the same number of times, even if the garbage was every second week. So there's still the same number of trucks. So it's still the same number of pickups, the same number of cans that they have to pick up each week.
So the change then, sorry, just a follow up, is what's being picked up might be different from what we had talked about in the contract, but the trucks and the routes and that's all the same. It's
Correct.
just, we're not necessarily having what was in the contract picked up on that alternating, right? We kind of made that with the food and the garbage, and so it's trucks are still moving around. It's just they're going to be picking up the similar things rather than alternating weeks like we had initially proposed.
Correct. Yeah, the contract is signed for weekly yard waste pickup because that was supposed to have the food scraps in it. But because we're not there yet, the garbage will still be picked up every week because that's where all the food scraps will be. So we don't want to leave the garbage for 2 weeks.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Bloomfield. Director Bloomfield.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'd like to move the administrative recommendation, which is simply to incorporate existing resident supplied carts to the new automated curbside collection program, and is not a renegotiation of any agreement.
Moved, seconded. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, Director Conans.
Yeah, I just want to say at when we did this with Penticton, there was, I don't want to say environmental disaster, but basically there were so many empty cans up in the garbage. It was just a sea of thousands of cans. And I was wondering if there was any thought to any type of recycling or what we can do about that, since we're all so interested in our environment.
Okay, I'll take that to Ms. Bloomfield.
Yeah, the reusing of the existing carts is part of that, and to try and reduce the number that'll be disposed of. We're working on ideas for something because we know that there's going to be a lot of carts. Did you have anything to add?
Mr. Bond?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to get that resin to market, just as someone that's been in the recycling game for a while. Like, you got dirty garbage cans, and they're not always the easiest to recycle. Disposal might be the better option, but we'll look at that, and we'll look and see what we can do, especially at our own facilities or our partner facilities, like the town of Vesuvius landfill. It's just not cheap or effective sometimes to recycle, and I just want to be honest with you. These are sometimes got garbage in them, these cans, and they're not always easy to recycle. So the cost to recycle them, it might be a lot simpler just to dispose of them in the waste. That's why when we look at these options for the carts, which have much higher cost and still a lot of value in them, especially if they're fairly new, that's where we think there might be benefit to the environment for us to include those carts within this program, make them through a rebate program, make them owned by the RDOS now, as every other cart will be. And then when that end of life comes, we would then replace that cart as we would with any other cart that we currently own.
Okay, so, and this is with respect to the motion? Yeah? Okay, Director Rodrigo?
Thank you, Chair. So storage of the brand new bins, because we are a little bit out of capacity for storage of anything. Where will they be? And then will that be an additional cost for needing to rent somewhere to put the clean bins that will be saved for later?
Mr. Bond, Ms. Bloomfield?
We don't have all the details. We are aware of several sites that the district owns currently, the regional district. We are also working with our member municipalities that provide carts as well to see if we could blend carts with them and store in the same area. These are all open discussions right now. It is something we need to clarify probably in the next few weeks as we are going out to procurement and the final amount of carts that we purchase over and we'd like to purchase more carts now than less, but if we don't have the space for it, it will impact through procurement how many extra we get. We have already got, through our partners, the town of Oliver, the town of Vesuvius, and the city of Penticton, and the village of Karamias have already provided spaces for the rollout. So they have been very generous in terms of allowing us access to certain facilities. We'll be using those temporarily for a few weeks. The long-term housing of it, we have our own landfill facilities. We also have some other private lands owned by the district. And we'll be working to see how best, through Lisa, where and how we can store them in different communities across the RDOS.
Okay. Further questions? Director Pendergraft.
Thank you. How is the word going to get out to everybody that has a cart that might fit in this program to be acquired by the regional district? Are you planning on canvassing every single resident, or is it going to be up to the resident to approach the RDOS?
Okay. Ms. Bloomfield?
Yeah, that's why we want to have these open houses in each of the communities. We're going to put out as much information as possible, probably a mail out to all the communities, just to try and get people aware that this is an option for them. And then there'll be a number where they call, and then we'll have staff go out and assess these bins.
Yeah, I can see that. Just as a quick follow-up, in terms of the open houses, you'd asked if there was a desire to have extra open houses in an area. How soon do we have to let you know on that? Because I think I need to actually touch bases with a few community associations and see if there's a desire for that and go from there.
Probably within the next week, maybe within the next week, because we want to get things printed up and out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I'd also just suggest that if you have it on a single 8.5 by 11 poster that can be Facebooked out, I think that would get the word out, at least that was an option. Any other comments or questions before I call the question? No, seeing none. All those in favor of the motion, which is that we're going to incorporate existing resident supplied carts to the new automated curbside collection program commencing July 1, providing the carts meet established requirements for the program. All those in favor? Okay. Anyone opposed? None. Okay. I don't see anything else on the agenda here. Thank you very much, Ms. Bloomfield and Mr. Bond. And can I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you.
Thank you, Director Taylor. We start the regular board meeting at 2:45, so we'll take the 10 minutes or whatever it is here, but be ready to go back at 2:45, please.
Just very quickly, we have a number for between operating and capital reserves or regional trails. It's $96,270.
Okay. Adam, if we could get everybody back to their seats here, we'll get started. Just check and see if we've got a quorum. 8, 12, we do have. Yeah, we've got enough to start. So we've got the agenda in front of us, this is the last opportunity for folks to remove anything off the consent agenda if you want to get it into the main body of the agenda. I'll ask that you raise that now. Seeing no hands or anything for that, looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Moved, seconded, thank you. All in favor? Great. Any opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to the consent agenda, corporate issues. Looking for a motion on that one. Is there a mover? Thank you. Seconded. All in favor? Great. Any opposed? Motion carries. Nothing on the consent agenda, development services. So that brings us to development services itself. Item B1. I'll go to the CAO, and this is an Area I, DVP.
Thank you, Chair. This application is seeking the variance to the maximum height of a retaining wall that applies to the subject property in order to undertake the construction of a retaining wall that exceeds the maximum permitted height. And the administrative recommendation is that the development variance permit I-2024.2026 to allow the construction of a retaining wall beyond the maximum building height at 485 Pineview Drive, Cleveland, be approved. Staff's here to answer your questions.
Okay, I'll go to Director Monteith.
Thank you. I would like to make the alternate recommendation to send it to the APC, please.
Okay, so you're moving send to the APC. Is there a seconder for that? It's seconded. Any discussion on that? This is a rural vote. When it goes to the APC, can I double check that, Ms. Malden? Yeah. Okay. Call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to B2, notification radius amendments, CAO.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to provide options to the board in relation to the notification of official community plan and zoning bylaw amendment application, development variance permit application, and temporary use permit application. And the recommendation is that the Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen Development Procedure Amendment Bylaw number 2500.35 2024 be read a first, second, and third time, and staff's here to answer your questions.
Okay, direction on this one? Anybody prepared to move this? Moved, seconded, thank you. Any discussion? Not seeing any hands. Again, this one is a rural vote. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to B3, a zoning amendment and OCP in Area C, CAO.
Thank you. This application is seeking to amend the zoning of an approximate 2.6 hectares portion of the subject property in order to allow for a two-lot subdivision. And the recommended motion is that the electoral area C official community plan amendment bylaw 2452.24 2024 and the Okanagan Valley zoning amendment bylaw 2800.41 2024 be read a third time and adopted. Staff's here to answer questions.
Okay, I'll go to Director Knodel. Direction on this one?
Moving the administrative recommendation.
Okay, moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Again, seeing no hands, and again, a rural vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item B4, another OCP and bylaw amendment, this time in Area E, CAO.
Thank you. This application is seeking to amend the zoning of the subject property in order to allow for an existing structure on the property to be converted to a single detached dwelling and to allow for agriculture. And the recommended motion is that the electoral area E official community plan amendment bylaw 3010.02 2024 and the Okanagan Valley zoning amendment bylaw 2800.46 2024 be read a third time and adopted. Staff's here to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Director Federico, direction?
Move the administrative recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this one? Again, this was another one from this morning's public hearing, or this afternoon's public hearing. I'll get that straight yet. Seeing no hands, another rural vote. Call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Down to community services. Item C1, Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program Grant, CAO.
So, thank you. So this goes from the committee meeting this morning regarding the $600,000 grant. This is just request permission from the board to apply for a $600,000 upgrade for an 8-kilometer segment of Kettle Valley Railway. So the grant may be also be used, as stated earlier, for benches, tables, and signs. And the recommended motion is that the regional district submit a grant application under the Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program for resurfacing an 8-kilometer section of the KVR Trail above Naramata between Glenford Park and Adria Tunnel. I believe staff's here to answer questions.
Okay, Director Federico, I'm sure you'd like to move this.
I'll move the administrative recommendation.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion on this one? Go ahead, Director Gettins.
Thank you. Sorry, I just lost my page. Go ahead. I'll come back.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? There's no other discussion. I'll ask Director Gettins.
Yeah, sorry. Is this? Yeah, thank you.
The one we talked about
thank
in
you.
committee.
Okay, thank you. I'm on totally the wrong page here. Can we just talk about you've got the numbers and you just shared the numbers with the reserves?
It was just over, it was $96,000. Our portion, from what I understand, would be 200,000. So that would equal, but our portion of the required for the grant, the way that we would fund the remainder would be through the 2025 budget, because you are talking about 2025.
Okay, so we don't have enough money in the reserves by about
The reserves, not the reserves as they stand as at the end of last year. So that's the numbers we're giving you. We do not include the 2025 portion that will be added to reserves.
Okay.
Okay, I see a hand. Follow up on that or no?
I just think that's important information.
Okay, Director Coyne?
Yeah, so I think Director Gettins is on to something here. So we're short if we get this, but Jim, you say there's going to be, more money going to the reserves, but then we heard Justin saying he wants to up the reserves even more, plus, I think there was 2 other major projects on there, so we're talking like, what, $500,000 increase this year plus?
CAO, thought?
What you heard and what would happen would be 2 different things. I have a meeting with the deputy CFO and the CFO tomorrow on all the budget, and there's a wish list doesn't mean it's something that it passes through the CAO. So what you heard today and what may happen will be not going to be the same thing.
Okay, any further discussion on this? Not seeing any other hands? Oh, go ahead, Director Gettins.
Thanks. So what's the deadline on this grant, and can we defer this decision until the meeting? It's the end of the month. So,
Okay, Director Bloomfield.
Thank you. Just looking for a little clarification from the CEO. And I thought I read on the application for that grant that the reserve input would be $125,000. But did you say $200,000?
That was just off the top of my head. I'm not too sure. So
it's 80-20 split, so whatever that works.
80-20, yes, it's the 80-20 split. Let's say how much.
Okay, so it's not.
It's $120,000 would be our share.
Yeah. So we're 20,000, 25,000 out, sort of thing. Okay. Go ahead.
Just a question about process. So when you apply for a grant, then that you're being expected to fund a portion of, do you not have to have those funds committed before applying for the grant?
CAO?
Yes. It's called shovel ready, which means it's not only the preparation, the planning's done of what work is required, but also the funding. In this case here, what's happening is what I'm believing is the staff doesn't want to lose out on the $600,000 grant. So they would take the 96,000 that they have now and add there's always a transfer to reserves on an ongoing basis in each of the budgets. And they would then supplement the difference to the transfer of reserves in the 2025.
That's the total grant is 600,000. Yes. CAO?
So our portion's 120,000, so we would need at least a transfer. The difference would have to be in the 2025 budget.
Yeah. Director Gettins and then Monteith.
Okay, thanks. So, okay, thanks for that clarity. And it does say too that it's to secure up to $600,000 as well. So I do agree that we shouldn't miss out on this opportunity, and it's an important asset. I do think though, as we proceed through our strategic planning, we should probably talk about these regional trails, and if we're going to get serious about them, I think we should get serious about them. We should have more reserves than that amount for these kind of opportunities. So I'll vote in favor of this. I just think it's an interesting position we find ourselves in.
True enough. Director Monteith.
Thank you. I just want to remind the board that the staff just picked up this file, so it's a pretty new thing for him too. So it's been something we've been talking about for some time. Yes, I agree, it's kind of a bit off in process, but I think the end goal is appropriate.
Okay, not seeing any other hands. This is a corporate vote. I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. C2, Memorandum of Understanding with BC Transit, CAO.
Thank you. This report is to present a proposed expansion of service by BC Transit in alignment with the most recent transit service plan, with specific reference to expand the service of Route 70 and a proposed additional service in Oliver and Osoyoos. Also, to allow budget planning for BC Transit, the MOU is to demonstrate a commitment by the RDOS to assist in procuring service funding and resources. Noting this MOU is signed will only come in place if BC Transit are able to secure provincial funding for the vehicles. And the administrative recommendation is that the board support the signing of a memorandum of agreement with BC Transit for future transit service expansion. Staff's here to answer questions.
Okay. Any discussion on this? I have a question for myself. I know it says Oliver and Osoyoos, but I'm assuming that they're anticipating areas A and C to be contributing to this. And this is more than we've got allowed through our tax requisitions for that. And I'm not sure that I'm prepared to support it. We don't get much benefit from transit in Area A as it stands. So could you explain who's exactly paying and how much?
Thank you, Chair. So currently the bylaw set up for the South Okanagan service includes A, C, D, and is that it? And then Osoyoos and Oliver. So right now this would be focused on the Oliver area. So we'd need a review of the existing bylaw to see whether it was fit for purpose for this service. And likely potentially a recreation of a new bylaw, which would require public assent.
Okay. Go to Director McCordoff and then Coyne.
Thank you. So when I'm looking at the financial implications, I see that the estimated additional annual net municipal share will be $238,000. Is that shared between Oliver, Osoyoos, and Area A and Area C?
At the
or
moment.
not?
So the proposed expansion would be in the town of Oliver, but it would also be related to the service that links through Osoyoos and the surrounding areas. So it would likely be borne, it would need to be borne because of the service location by the town of Oliver, but I'm not sure how that would work. And the corporate officer might have a bit more insight to how that might work with the bylaw.
I'll go to Ms. Molden.
So that was my hesitation with this service proposal as well. So this agreement allows us to start work with BC Transit on what that service looks like. And so if cost is to be borne just to Oliver, there's two options. One, we amend the existing establishment bylaw to adjust the apportionment. So Oliver would pay more, and that would be based on a percentage. Or two, there would have to be a separate service, and Oliver would have to create that. So if it failed, it would be at Oliver, and BC Transit would have to adapt accordingly. So there's work to be done on this, and yeah, that was my question too.
Okay. Any thoughts on this? Director Coyne first, and then go ahead.
I'm looking at the Route 70 and the Kelowna Run and weekend service and evening service, and I mean, it's all great, and I think the Similkameen's been pretty good, sports about this, but I mean, the service really does nothing for us at this point, and until Route 50 becomes a regional service, I'm really reluctant to jump into further funding a bus service that we can't even access. So I mean, I'll play along, but I'm not happy about it. I'm not happy about the Kelowna Run to begin with. And we've been very vocal since day one that this is not a service that services the Similkameen, but we believe in the regional approach and whatnot. But here we are. We're looking at a weekend service. None of us are going to be able to access it because we don't have a bus. We're talking about an evening service. Again, we don't have any way to get to it. So I'm a little frustrated with this Route 70 all around right now. And until we start talking about a real regional service where we're all connected together, all the way from Princeton to Osoyoos, all the way up to, Kelowna, this isn't really a regional service. These are a bunch of little patchworks that aren't connecting up, and I'm pretty frustrated with it.
Is there a comment on that?
Through the chair, I hear that frustration, and one of the things on our plan that we're putting forward as a strategic priority from staff is to do a complete review of the transit bylaws to see where we can get efficiencies across the region, and with that improve services. So particularly with the Route 50 conversation, knowing that that's in process, I think there's opportunity to further enhance the more regional routes to connect into that interregional Route 70. And I think, based on a lot of the inquiries that I've received to the transit inbox, a lot of it is around weekend access to the Kelowna airport as well as evening access from the airport. So there is definitely a demand there, but I also recognise that the connectivity to the rest of the region, to the Similkameen in particular, is not going to match that service addition.
Okay, Ms. Malden first, and then over to Director Holmes.
So perhaps a separate recommendation. When we were down at UBCM, I did have an opportunity to speak to BC Transit about a regional service. They didn't jump all over it, but they did say that if our board expressed an interest and had directed that to be investigated for 2025, that they would definitely consider that. So if the board is interested, that might be a recommendation you want to put forward.
Okay, Director Holmes, do you want to follow up, Director Coyne?
Yeah, I think if we're going to start talking about a regional approach to this, then we need to have a regional service and a true regional service, because right now what we have is not a real regional service. It's, like I said, it's a patchwork, and, until 50 leaves Princeton and becomes a regional district service, it's our service that we're accommodating the rest of the Similkameen to help get our people over here. I think if we approach BC Transit, like you said, Christy, I think they'll listen to us, and I think there's a willingness on their part. I mean, I've been hounding them for almost 7 years about this, and we got to do something, because right now we're paying into services we don't get access to. And like I said, we've been pretty good sports about it, but I'm seeing more and more service and less access. So I would, if you want a motion to that, I'd make a motion that we look at a regional service and approach BC Transit about it.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Go ahead, Director Bloomfield.
I'll second that, because I actually agree with Director Coyne, and I think that a regional service is probably long overdue after the collapse of Greyhound. And the question I was going to ask was, are we tied to BC Transit for a regional service? Could we drop them? And because they're so slow, I know it just takes so long with BC Transit. What are the options, basically?
Can you answer that, or have a?
So BC Transit being a provincial corporation, they provide a significant amount of the funding for the transit services. If we were to go on our own, we would lose close to 50% of that funding. Sorry, 56%. Thank you, CAO. So that would be the biggest challenge with that piece.
Okay.
That being said, when we did start talking to BC Transit about having an in-town actual bus service, we said, if you guys aren't willing, we will probably go buy our own bus because this is getting ridiculous. And BC Transit did start talking to us because that's their job, is to provide bus service. So, you know, it's not as expensive as everybody thinks to start your own bus service, just like your own garbage service. We've done it. I'll do my own bus service if I have to.
Okay. Director Holmes?
Yeah, I think Route 70 it should work for the Similk Main, and if for whatever reason it can't, then maybe it ought to be a sub-regional service. But I was wondering, that Route 70, those are the large buses. So, and we've talked about this before, I've talked about this, is can't we get some advertising on those buses and get revenue that way to help pay for the expansion of this service? Because, you know, this is a billboard going up and down the highway seen by thousands of people every day. You think that'd be a prime bus for advertising.
Is there a comment on that? I noticed most of the BC Transit buses already have advertisement on them, and I'm assuming they're getting it, so. But
Yep, so the provider, Berry and Smith, run the majority of the South Okanagan bus services, except the Route 50, and the advertising revenue comes in through BC Transit. So that's identified in the overall budget in the operating agreement year on year.
Okay. You're okay. Director Conans, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We should be having that route that we talked about earlier in our strategic planning, for sure. What I wanted to know was, well, I have to say that 2 times now, BC Transit gave a presentation here and at the city, and I asked them each time, how long does it take to get from Penticton to UBC or the airport? And they said each time they're going to get back to me, and they never have. And the reason why is I'd really like to know, I think it takes a really long time. Like, I'm not kidding. By the time you make the connections, it's could be 5-6 hours or more to get to the. So I would love to know the numbers of the people that actually get to the airport from here, because it's a great deal, $7 or whatever it is, $8 something to go to the airport compared to any other way. It's just that I'm just wondering how many people are actually doing it, because the connections I don't think are there. And also, obviously, UBC is really important for that too. The other thing I wanted to know was, and I can ask you that, but the other thing I wanted to know was this Peachland. Isn't it Peachland that's pulling out of it, or West Kelowna? And then will that up? Somebody was, okay, and they don't want to do it anymore, even though were they paying part of it and now they aren't because they don't want in at all, or?
Let's get clarification here. Go ahead.
So the first question, I can tell you firsthand experience, it takes around 2 hours from Penticton to Kelowna Airport using the service. So it also relies on timing your run and knowing the service. There's 4 services a day northbound. But that can vary. There's also other traffic issues and then timing and so on. So, but then in regards to the Peachland note, there has been indication that Peachland is looking to exit. There's been some initial discussions, but it hasn't progressed further than that with BC Transit. I can check in with them on the status of that, whether that is going to become official, which then will change the costing, I imagine, for the operating agreement.
Our cost goes up?
If they back out?
If they back out?
I imagine. I think in recent years it's been, I think it's been about $8,000 they've been putting in the pot. I'd have to confirm that number. So, yeah.
I seen a hand here. Go ahead, Director Bloomfield, and then McCordoff.
Yeah, I appreciate the answer on that you gave earlier about BC Transit and, you know, looking at alternatives, but I don't think that we should not look at alternatives based on what we think the money might look like. Let's give an independent bus service a chance to at least come with a proposal, and let's look at the numbers, and if they work, they work, and if they don't work, as you suspect, then they don't work. But it doesn't hurt to get that information so that we've got something to base a decision on.
Okay, Director McCordoff.
Thank you. And I know that you're talking about Route 70, but I'm going to part number 2 on the financial implications here. And I am a little concerned that we're still not quite sure the amount of the 238,000, who's going to pay for it, how it's going to be divided up. And I'm looking at Director Ventimilla, and she looks a little surprised as well. So my thinking is that we should not be jumping into this until we have some more information on this and who's going to pay for what and how it's going to work. So I can't support this at the moment. Thanks.
Okay. Just for clarity, the motion on the floor is just to look at a regional service. It isn't to sign this MOU. Okay. And I had some hands here. I'll go to Director Ventimilla and then Knodel.
Thank you, Chair. So just so that I understand, though, the motion is to support the signing of the MOU.
That was the recommended. We've got just a motion on the floor right now to look at, regional transit service overall.
Oh, okay. So I want to speak specifically to the agenda item, so maybe I'm not involved in this conversation.
We're going to deal with that one in a moment. So Director Knodel, is this on the regional service or is it on that specific?
On the specific item 2.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead, Director Federico.
Thank you, through the chair. So if we're motion right now, then it's for regional service. Does that encapsulate what is needed for the similkameen, or does it need to be more specific to include the similkameen into the plan?
Go ahead.
I think it's implied that we look at an actual regional service overall, not just, and that would include, I would hope, Osoyoos, Oliver, Naramata, and whatnot. Yeah, all of us.
If it was excluding them, I think it would be sub-regional. This is regional,
Well,
so it
because
should be everybody.
We want to get to Osoyoos too.
So just to be clear, does this motion give staff the direction they need as far as CAO? As far as the regional service pursuit?
Yes, I see.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other hands on this specifically. I'll call the question on the regional service. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Now dealing with this MOU. Is there someone prepared to make that motion or should we wait? Or maybe the question is how soon does this need to be signed before anything happens?
We defer it.
So for context, this has been deferred several boards already, just through the nature of capacity for the boards. With this MOU, this doesn't guarantee that the service would arise, but what it does is essentially allows BC Transit to procure the buses. And then if we choose to exit that, we're then liable for that cost. So it's very important we treat this with the appropriate care. And sorry. Alternatively, we could look to separate the Oliver component and the Route 70 and separate them into two different documents as an MOU, or look to defer completely.
I think both of them have some questions that I'm not sure we can answer at this stage or maybe commit to, but I'll go to the CAO and then I'll look to the board here for direction.
Based on the risk that I see that we're liable if we back out of it, I would wait until they come back to us, they being BC Transit, and tell us what the costs are. And then from that, we can come back and tell you what your costs are.
Okay. So we're okay with that as a board, or should we, do you need a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion to defer until BC Transit comes back with a price.
Okay, with the correct numbers? Okay, it's seconded. Do you want to speak to it, Director Ventimilla, or?
I suppose I can just say what I was going to ask. I was going to ask, I arrived, I guess, somewhat naively thinking that all the funding had been sorted out and we were sharing this magnificent new program for Oliver and Osoyoos. And given that it clearly has not, I was going to ask if there are any easy off-ramps throughout this process if we can't come to agreement on how it's funded. And that was obviously just answered.
Yeah, no easy off-ramps or no cheap off-ramps. Director Knodel, did you want to speak to it or have a question in regards to it as well?
Yeah, my comment was just that, we're racing forward and we can't even supply a bus stop in an area that has 600 potential patrons of a demographic that normally uses the buses. So, we're getting kind of a cart way out in front of a horse until we can get some bus stops in. Moving the service on seems a little pointless. That's kind of my thought on it. Thank you, though.
Okay, so the motion is to wait until we get a costing back from BC Transit. Call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to protective services. Item D1, Disaster Risk Reduction Climate Adaptation Grant, CAO.
Thank you. First, I want to recognize that this is 100% funding. The purpose for this report is to secure provincial funding for the purchase of 2 Tiger Dam flood mitigation system trailers and provide region-wide training. And the administrative recommendation is that the board submit an application for the 2024-2025 Disaster Risk Reduction Climate Adaptation Grant under the Union of BC Municipality Community Emergency Preparedness, and that the board support a regional application that includes Lower Similkameen Indian Band, Village of Kiramias, and the town of Osoyoos. Staff's here to answer questions.
Go to Director Wiebe first.
Make the motion.
Moved. Are you seconding? Seconded. Go ahead, Director Coyne, speak to it.
Yeah, I have a question. So you want to maintain Tiger Dams? I've always been told not to buy into that, just because of the nature of it. But is that, because now we're liable for the maintenance and everything else, whereas if they come from EMCR, then they're responsible for that part of it.
Go ahead.
That would be true. Unfortunately, deployment from EMCR here could take forever, be very much late to the game, and also may never come. And that is the issue that we have faced apparently in the past, trying to get resources from EMCR. So that is why staff, we all talked about it and decided that with these joint partners, that it would be a good opportunity to have 2 Tiger Dam trailers filled, right, with Tiger Dams in 2 areas of the region. They can be deployed back and forth, but easily, and stored in 2 different locations within the region.
Okay, follow up?
So have you thought about HESCOs and stuff like that as well? Because they seem to be a bit more, for rivers, they're a little bit more sturdy than the other ones.
They are, but unfortunately, the storage and maintenance of them are more difficult.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Director Taylor?
Yeah, I don't have the same intimate familiarity that some of the other areas have got with these ones, but would the Tiger Dams come in, or the ones in the trailer, like would we have a variety of sizes of these, or is it, we're basically going to have just the large size?
Yes, they come in, my understanding is they come in one size? No? Okay.
Apparently they come in.
Multiples, 2 sizes? Okay. Sorry, I'm not the expert on Tiger Dams, but the objective would be to buy dams that are effective for the areas that we're putting them in. Mm-hmm.
Okay. A follow up to that, Director Taylor, or are you?
Yeah, well, I guess just, obviously there's the huge, massive ones, but there seem to be a lot of these that are geared at a much smaller size that might be much relatively useful for not maybe against a river, but Shuttleworth Creek and other places, as opposed to sandbags.
Yeah. Might be worth suggesting having a couple of small ones versus one monster.
That's what I'm
be a little more versatile.
Getting at.
Go ahead, Director Coyne, and then
there's kind of a standard that you deploy, and that's what you use. You got to make sure that you have enough there to stop it, right? So if you get, I haven't seen the small ones. I've heard there's a couple different sizes from some of the salespeople. You got to watch because there's different salespeople for different types of Tiger Dams, and now they have this new one it's really cool. It's like an L-shaped thing, and it's a really heavy plastic, which is really cool. But they're like $450 linear foot or some bloody thing. So, no, they're, it's nuts. But anyway, yeah, no, I mean, I have full faith that if this is what you guys want to get, then I'll 100% support you on it. I just was curious about the other part of it because like for us, it's not the best to deploy, but for over here and like Tulameen, you know, we've deployed them in Tulameen in the past and they work great. The only problem is when people's houses and stuff get in the way, but you work around them.
Okay, follow up, go ahead.
Well, all I know is that, like, I've got some known areas that are probably gonna flood this weekend. So, you know.
This won't be there in time,
No,
unfortunately.
no, unfortunately not, yeah.
Director McCordoff? and then
Thank you.
over
The
to
last
Director
time
Lee.
we had flooding in Esuias, many of the lakeshore owners bought their own. And so they have them stored somewhere. I think you inflate them. I don't know, you might be able to put out a note and ask if anybody's got them. And I don't know how well they store because it's been about 4 or 5 years since they've been used. So they may not last, but you know what? People felt it strongly enough that they bought their own.
Yeah. Director Weeb?
And I think through the chair, that was we looked at the HESCO wire ones. They work great. I see where they are located in Princeton and then okay. But a more permanent solution, because what we ran into was you can't redeploy them. Once they're filled with sand, they get difficult to take back down. I mean, obviously you can do it, but whereas the water, you drain the water out of the Tiger Dam and roll them up, put them back in the trailer and carry on. So they're easy to deploy. They're easy to to set back up. They're good at a temporary measure. And I think currently Kirimeus has, I think, 100 feet. Somebody donated one. But it just allows us the maneuverability and the quick response, which is why we just said absolutely more than willing to help support. It was a kind of a late addition, but something that we thought absolutely more than happy to help out with. So.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we do have the motion on the floor. Call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Finance, the permissive tax exemption. I'll go to the CAO.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's that time of year. The board, at its discretion, may grant exemptions and eligible organizations for tax exemptions. For those property within the regional districts, areas that also have tax exemptions that are within municipalities, they must apply directly to the municipal government. One thing that you're going to see, essentially it's a walk-in. There was one late application, and staff does not have the authority to override one of your policies, but you do. So staff's going to be talking about that, and if there's any questions, they're able to answer.
Okay. Are you giving us a quick presentation?
We are very quick, I promise.
All right, go ahead.
So since you only see this once a year, we're definitely going to give you a really, really quick refresher. This is Katarina, by the way.
Okay, nice to meet you.
Tax exemptions are granted at the discretion of local governments, and the Local Government Act states the exemption bylaw must be adopted on or before October 31st each year. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm not moving this. So examples of properties that are generally eligible for exemptions are land and/or improvements owned or held by an athletic or service organization, art galleries or museums owned by a charitable organization, and not-for-profit seniors and community housing. Places of public worship are treated slightly differently. They receive an automatic statutory property tax exemption, so they do not need to apply for the permissive tax exemptions through us. And for your information, the Okanagan Falls United Church did apply, but because they do receive the statutory exemption, we did not add them to our list this year.
And some of the goals of the tax exemptions are to promote the developments that benefit the community, such as athletic clubs, as They often make their fields and facilities available to the general public. Also not-for-profit groups that provide services to the community that help meet local government's objectives. Examples are not-for-profit organizations that have programs for at-risk youth and also support heritage properties. Also, attract new residents and businesses and encourage economic development, support riparian properties that help meet municipal conservation and environmental goals, and support operation of public recreational facilities such as golf courses, which assist in achieving social, cultural, and health-related goals. And I have a couple of points on golf courses. While they're often exempt, they provide a large amount of community benefits as they provide recreational opportunities and green spaces that benefit the community. Offering tax exemptions encourages maintenance and availability of these spaces for public use, and it reduces the need for local governments to invest in other recreational facilities. It's also supporting non-for-profit organizations, as some golf courses are operated by non-for-profit organizations. And economic development, golf courses attract tourists and boost local economies. They also have local jobs and generate revenue for the area. And the last one, environmental conservation. Many golf courses are involved in environmental conservation efforts, such as maintaining green spaces and protecting local wildlife habitats. And that's it.
Okay, any questions for staff on that? Go ahead, Director Roberts.
Thank you, through the chair. I had a question from the museum in Headley, and I think it would have been for last year, that they'd missed the exemption time to put in, and strictly because it came out around Christmas time. I was just trying to get some clarity on that. They said it came out when everybody was off. They're not in the museum. Then when they got access to the information and they missed it. So I helped them in another way, but that's the first time I'd had that happen. And I thought they were almost like on a continuum. So I don't know what changed.
It's an advertisement every year that goes out there. We don't automatically take it for granted that anybody's going to go again and apply. So.
Correct. We do advertise in advance as required, but it is not Christmas time. It's the fall.
Okay. Go ahead, Director Taylor.
I'm going to, I think, move the addition of the Legion to this list.
Is that the one that we're asking to have put on?
Yes, that's the one.
Okay. I think, do we need the first motion on the floor and then add it to it, or should we? Ms. Malden.
So we should put the motion on the floor as is, and then an amendment
Yes.
to add the Legion, and then to read the entire thing as amended.
That was my suspicion. I just wanted to make sure it was correct. So we're moved and seconded. Okay, now I'll go to Director Taylor.
I'd move an amendment to include the Royal Canadian Legion in Okanagan Falls.
And seconded. It's on, the amendment is on the floor. So any discussion on the amendment? Seeing no hands, I'll call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we've got an amended motion to allow these permissive tax exemptions. Is there any further discussion on that first? Director Knodel, I see a hand coming up.
Just one question. Fairview Golf Course is 4 times the amount of Penticton Golf Course. Is this an all or nothing proposition?
Can you answer that?
I believe the piece of, for the Penticton Golf Course is just a tiny portion of it that is in the RDOS.
Okay. So it's not all inside the regional district?
Correct.
Okay.
If I may follow up, then does the town of Penticton cover the rest of it?
They're nodding their heads yes.
Okay, thank you. Good enough.
Okay, any other discussion, Director Holmes?
Just a question. So for all these, 100% of the taxes are exempted? Or is it a percentage?
Go ahead, staff.
There are the gleaners, we estimated at 80% because there is a small house on the property that's rented out, so it's for a different purpose. And the golf courses, I believe, are also at 80%.
Okay, follow up on that, or?
Just you know, in obviously not now, but at some point, I mean, none of these affect me, but you might want to consider putting categories of percentage exemptions. They don't, not all societies or you know, are kind of equal in terms of their importance to a community. And so you might want to have amend a policy so that certain ones get, I mean, Summerland, we have 100%, 90%, and 75%, depending on what kind of organizations, what service they provide to the community, and whether the municipality would have to do them if they didn't exist, and that sort of thing. So it's just something to consider because it is lost tax revenue. So.
For sure. I go to the CEO first and then over to Director Klein.
So I talked to CFO and I have talked about this. One of the things that hasn't been done for umpteen years is review that percentage. So it's not the service that they're providing. It's actually, does that property generate revenue in any way? So you have to figure out a way of the amount of revenue that property is generating, and that is taxable. And that's something that I would like to send out the notification to apply for the permissive tax exemption earlier so that we would have time to figure out what percentage that is.
Okay, to actually do some calculations. Oh boy, that brought up a whole bunch of hands, but I'll go to Director Coyne first and then over to Bush.
Yeah, can you explain the Princeton Golf Course, since we own it and it's run by a nonprofit? So I just see that the taxable amount is 909 and then the tax exemption portion is less than last year.
Staff? Go ahead.
I believe like it's just an estimate, and I think last year we may not have calculated the 80% on it.
So it is fully non-taxable, right? I'm not paying the regional district taxes from the town.
No. No.
CAO?
Our bylaw states that a golf course could be up to only 80% deduct.
Even though it's owned by the municipality?
Go ahead.
So as soon as it's owned by the municipality, but as soon as you lease it or rent it to anyone else, it just becomes taxable.
Okay, so we'll take it in next year.
That's an option. Director Bush, and then over to this side. Go ahead.
Can I ask, do we know why the Kermis Elks Lodge didn't submit an application?
I'm not sure, but I'll ask staff.
I tried to get a hold of him a few times and just didn't get it. But if you want, do you want me to follow up? And
Oh, I can do it.
Do you want it? Yeah, okay.
Sure.
Perfect, yeah.
Well, they're going to be awfully short on time because there's no board meetings between now and the end of October.
No, but
So
we
they
can do it
might be exempt for
for
this
next
year.
year.
Yeah, or might miss out this year, but for next year, fine. CAO?
You're correct, it's too late.
Yeah.
The board has to approve the bylaw today so that the BC assessment could give them the exemption.
Okay, I'm going to Director Van Elfen and then Taylor.
Sorry, maybe I'm missing something, but in Summerland, they have, all these exemptions have to be accompanied with their financial statements. Is that the case here too? Thank you.
Okay, Director Taylor?
Yeah, just along these same lines, I'd like to see a flat percentage, I think, particularly when there's sale of alcohol, that kind of stuff, and just remove that in some way.
Okay. Over to Director Holmes.
So yes, absolutely. There's taxable portions of land. So take a golf club, for example. The clubhouse shouldn't be exempted because they're running a restaurant there and making profit and everything like that. So you take that out, but still, you can still say
okay, look at your community and see different organizations. And so, for example, in Summerland, we have the Yacht Club, and they got 75% of exemption. We don't give them 100% exemption because they don't have the same community access. And if they didn't exist, they have a different level depending on what they do compared to, say, the Youth Club, which is considered important, and they get, say, 100% exemption. So, you can look at your permissive tax exemptions in certain ways to support those organizations, which, the community wants to support, as opposed to, necessarily giving 100% off to somebody with big boats, for example, right? So it's a way of, you can still get some revenue out of some of these properties. You can say some of these organizations ought to be paying some tax, right? So it's, I think it should be considered. I mean, maybe not.
Probably a review in point, but CAO?
I was just going to say, at the board's discretion, yes, we could do something like that and bring back a report so that it's consistent. I don't recommend that it's at the discretion of staff. It'd be a definitive number that we would bring back the recommendation, and then it's across the board.
Okay. We do have a motion. I'll go to Director.
Just really quickly on the math, if golf courses are only eligible for up to 80%, then is the city of Penticton number off just a little bit? Or is it different because it's just a small portion of the land?
I think it's different because of that small portion, but CAO?
I would guess if you add Penticton's permissive exemption number and ours, they would be similar. Right now, I believe it's only on the west side of the channel. So it's a small portion, which is within our area. And that's all. You're not looking at the whole golf course.
Okay. Director Roberts, did I see a hand?
I figured my own question out.
Oh, okay. You answered your own. Perfect. So we have an amended motion. So dealing with the whole thing, including Director Taylor's amendment. All those in favor? Perfect. Any opposed? Motion carries. Over to Legislative Services, video surveillance at landfills, CAO.
Thank you. This report is to obtain approval for the installation of surveillance cameras in accordance with the RDOS policy. The administration recommendation is that the Board of Directors approve the installation of 2 replacement and 1 new video surveillance camera at Campbell Mountain Landfill located at 1765 Reservoir Road, Penticton, and that the Board of Directors approve the installation of 1 video camera at Okanagan Falls Landfill located at 3751 Allendale Lake Road, Okanagan Falls, and that the Board of Directors approve the installation of 2 video surveillance cameras at Oliver Landfill located at 498 Saddle Ridge Road, Oliver, and that the Board of Directors approve the installation of 1 video surveillance camera at the Carameas Transfer Station located at 860 El Dorado Drive, Carameas. You'll see a common denominator here. This is hopefully it will reduce vandalism and theft.
Okay, direction from the board on this? Someone moved? Seconded? Thank you. Any discussion on this? Oh, a couple of hands. I'll start with Director Bush and then Federico.
So it's been my experience that really the cameras don't do any good. You can never see a clear picture of who's being vandalizing or whatever. So I think I'd be voting against this because just
okay.
They don't really do anything and they're a big expense.
I'll just go to staff for, they're the ones that have been reviewing it if and when they're needed, so.
Yeah, so we actually have been using the cameras with some effect in the last probably 2 years. The quality of the pictures have improved significantly. We work closely with the RCMP to transfer the video over to them. They may not be able to capture the person in the act, but they can identify those individuals who may appear in other videos frequently. And so therefore they can proceed with an investigation like that. So it has been helpful and it has actually resulted in a few people being arrested. But the instances of vandalism continue to escalate all the time at all the landfills.
Okay. Director Federico?
Yes, thank you to the chair. The one at Campbell Mountain, because you did indicate the 3 gas tanks of the RDOS vehicles. So is that one that's gonna be on that house, like just as you're coming up the hill before the landfill?
I believe that's the plan, yes.
Okay, any other discussion on this? Director Bloomfield and then Taylor?
Yeah, through the chair, is it a requirement of insurance companies or does it affect our insurance premiums if we don't have cameras or do have cameras?
Ms. Mulden?
There was nothing when we initially did the research on this that, that indicated that we had to have this for insurance purposes at all. So I would say no.
Okay. Director Taylor and then Holmes?
Yeah, just wondering, two questions. Are really the number of cameras proposed enough? Three, actually. If they were vandalized before, are you putting them in a different place or protecting them in a way such that they hopefully can't be vandalized now? And third, why do we need to run it 24/7? Like, why do we need to take pictures of people during the daytime? Is that a privacy?
So it's all a privacy deal. That's why we do this process the way that we do. So the running of them 24/7 is so that if there's incidences of vandalism where staff can't see what's going on, then we can capture that for after the fact. The camera also helps for those, if a situation emerges immediately, say a fire, staff can immediately, we can pull that video and we can have a look and perhaps head something off immediately. So that's the 24/7 aspect of it. In the scale house, staff have a live video, which they can view things occurring at the moment, but that does not tape and record for any purposes that we would use. The one that does record. So after hours, of course, is when it's the most active, but things do occur during the day as well. So that's why the 24/7. As for the vandalism of the cameras, not so much. It's the vandalism of the property. So yes, they are placed in areas where they're not the most visible. However, we have an awful lot of signage that we put out there as well. And that's part of the requirements of the Privacy Commissioner's Office to advise people that cameras are present and recording everything.
Okay, Director Holmes and then Coyne.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is the video admissible evidence in court? Does it help the RCMP that way to secure convictions?
I believe it does. Yes, sorry, I jumped the gun there. I believe it does. Yeah, they have found that our video is quite useful to them in pleading their cases.
Okay, Director Coyne.
Yeah, I'll support this. The new camera technology is pretty unbelievable. I got ones now that track you and they can identify you, and it's insane. It's creepy and insane, but yeah, I can zoom right in on you and stuff. So it's a far cry from the stuff that I was selling, even 10 years ago. Like, that stuff was garbage compared to this. So I'll support it.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. No items removed from the consent, so down to the CAO report.
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report from the CAO. I don't actually have anything to report either from the chair. Director's motions? Any director's motions to be made today or notices of motions? Seeing none. Board members' verbal updates. Anything to report from your communities? I'll go to Director McCordoff first and then over to Director Holmes.
So last Friday, I went to the Sun Bowl Arena, which is owned by the town of Suisse and the regional district, Area A. And it was we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of that. And it was quite interesting to look back and see the history of it. Who was there? It was opened officially by Chief Dan George in 1974, along with the mayor and a few other people. But I was there representing the town and the regional district as the chair was on holiday.
Not quite a holiday, but out of town anyway. Thanks for that. Director Holmes.
Yes, I'd just like to say that this is Director Van Elfen's last official board meeting. Effective the inaugural meeting, Richard Bark will be taking his place. So I'd just like to thank Marty for his last 2 years of service.
Well, that's a perfect segue maybe into we do have a small gift for Director Van Elfen for his 2 years here at the board, and I'll just grab it here from behind, and I'd like to present it to him. So.
We don't get anything, we get voted
Well, finishes off. Okay, thanks for that, Director Holmes. Director Weeb, anything from your community?
Just a real quick, we're super excited. We hired a new CAO. It's public now. I've known for a while, but it's always great to steal somebody from another community that may not be currently in the community, but at least we're keeping it within the Okanagan. So we've hired Jeanette Van Vianen. Yeah, so we've had an interim CAO, Diane Vakovich, who's been amazing, helping us keep everything floating. And now we've got a permanent CAO. So we're excited for that next step. And if you know of anybody looking to be a CFO, could use one of those too.
Yeah, well, congrats. Anything else to report from anybody's communities? Director Taylor.
Just two quick comments. One, as I've said earlier, we had a bit of roadside flooding in a couple of our places, in the predictable places. But like it was literally 15 minutes of power rain. And so I am hoping that we can get this meeting with Modi set up for the 19th. And in our community, we have, I would say, probably miles of road with inadequate, well, I won't go that far, with ditching that looks like it could use some attention. And I'm sure that you have probably got some issues that you could raise at the same time. And then the last one, our industrial park is now ready for sale. So I'd like to put ourselves out there and be available for the community, for the regional district, one region working together. We would be happy to oblige if there are people that need industrial land. We have lots available.
Okay, good to hear.
Economic development.
Director Conans.
Yeah, just on that note, I think it's a great idea that we're meeting with Modi also, but it would be great to meet here so that the public can hear the answers to our questions, which I know has happened in the past. But I'm sure the CAO knows why they won't meet here.
I suspect so, but CAO,
They'd like to have a workshop outside of official board meeting, and we can discuss that later, but that came from them. They, in a nice way, they didn't
Their
want to come in.
request,
It's
yeah.
their request.
okay, no other verbal updates? Not seeing any online. That brings us down to board representations. There's nothing from the MFA or the MIA, Okanagan Basin Water Board. Anything there to report? Director Holmes?
Yeah, I guess the big thing, our last meeting, I can't remember what it was, a few weeks ago here in this room, actually, because we rotate around. The OBWB got an updated 5-year permit from the province to manage milfoil on all our lakes. And that includes an updated maps of lakes with milfoil. And also, the big thing is that they can now treat new areas as needed, whereas before, every time there was a new area, they have to go back to the province and ask if they could treat this area. So it's really cumbersome. So it's a much more agile process now, and if they have the science there, they can just go ahead and do it. So this is pretty huge. It should really help control the milfoil. I think Director McCorduff has a little story to add to that. So.
Go ahead, Director.
Well, re-milfoil, I was just telling Director Holmes that I missed the last board meeting here because I was on the International Lake Osoyoos Board of Control, and we went out on the lake in the cold in 4 boats to have a tour around, and we had to stop because one of the boats had milfoil attached to their motor, and they had to stop, haul the motor up, take the milfoil off. So it's a really needed service that is provided to more and more lakes. So we appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay. Anything further, Director Holmes? No? Okanagan Film Commission, anything there, Director Coyne?
Tonight we have our AGM, which was supposed to happen in the spring, but yeah, so finally we're having it.
Okay. There is some shooting going on down in our neck of the woods for a movie, I think, at the moment. It's on the Anarchist on my mom's property, actually. So lots of activity there with Film Commission. Okanagan Regional Library, anything there, Director Rodrigo? I see it pointing at you.
Yep, I attended the ORL meeting, so a lot of the focus was on budget. There's a bit of an increase, so numbers should be coming to us shortly for that. And then exciting, at least for Area E, is that the ORL has put in $100,000 to help with the renovation of our library. So I'm super excited for that. Yeah.
Good news. Okanagan Sterile Insect Release. George, Director Bush.
Yeah, so the last meeting, I think we okayed a 4% increase for tax notice for SIR.
Okay, so I'm sure we'll be getting that for our budget notification too. Simia, anything there, Director Knodel?
Nothing to report.
Nothing. Starling Control, Director Bush.
Nothing, but I just wanted to ask quickly, if Anna gets elected, would she still work at, for the OWB? No? Okay.
No. She's on leave, I'm assuming now, while she's running? Okay, good to know. At CBC, I usually went to Director Johansson, but either McCordoff or Bloomfield, anything there?
So there was a 2-day meeting this month. I was not able to go. I should have been here, but I was actually at the International Board of Control, which was in Osoyoos. So I had 3 main ones on that one day. It was over in Kimberley, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to wait for the minutes to come out before I report on it.
Okay. All right. That brings us down to a closed session. And I got to read out this, that in accordance with section 91C and 92B of the Community Charter, the board closed the meeting to the public on the basis of labor relations or other employee relations and the consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the municipality, a provincial government, or the federal government, or both, or between a provincial government or the federal government, or both and a third party. So with that, looking for a motion to go in camera. Moved. Thank you. Seconded. All in favor? Great. Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll just give it, and I'm going to ask the CAO, since he's got them in front of him, what we're rising and reporting on.
Thank you. The first one is that the closed session minutes of the October 3rd, 2024 board meeting be adopted. And the second one is that the board support the CAO request for a planner 1 and a utility employee for early approval be also approved and adopted.
Okay, and those were adopted. So.
They were adopted at the October 3rd in-camera meeting.
Okay, looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you very much. I'm not even going to ask for opposition to that. Thanks, everybody, for your patience, and we will see you guys 7th, I think it is, of November.